When you book a Best Western hotel, you get all the great stuff you'd expect from a big brand, plus the feel-good glow of knowing every booking supports proudly independent hotels. Like Roger Thorpe Manor in Yorkshire, run by the Metcalfe family. So with 290 unique places to stay, you're not just booking, you're booking good. Best Western. Booking good.
Welcome back to Headingley for our latest episode of Box 2 in partnership with Best Western Hotels GB, supporting local, proudly independent hotels. Welcome back to Box 2, myself, Jamie Jones-Buchanan, for this another weekly roundup. And this time I'm joined by former teammate, Leeds Rhinos legend, and my mentor on the pitch back in the day and off the pitch behind the TV cameras as well, Barrie McDermott. Baz, great to have you. Rivalry round, probably one of your favourite weeks back as a player.
Always look forward to that. I think that marathon stint of, we used to get Thursday, didn't we? Monday, Thursday and Monday, and look forward to Bradford. Yeah. Look forward to the challenge that was Bradford in the late 90s and noughties. That awesome foursome that they went into any match with meant that you had to be physical, and then you had to put yourself back together and get ready for Monday. But yeah, Leeds have got it all to do this year, because Huddersfield Giants are no easy beat. Traditionally, we've always struggled with them. Yeah. Back in the day when Danny Brough was kicking us to death, it was always a fixture that we toiled with. But yeah, the players and the league have got it. Probably common sense has prevailed, and there's just that one round of fixtures, but looking forward to it.
Really important. You mentioned Danny Brough and his kicking game. Jordan Abdul at OKR caused us all kinds of nightmares at the back. It was a difficult night, wasn't it? Torrential rain, and the back three, well, it was one that they won't forget for all the wrong reasons, but I imagine learning experience down the line, they'll be better for it.
You felt for Luke Cooley, didn't you? You felt for Durrell as well, because all those kicks, and it's easy for us middlemen. You're like, get some pressure on him, take some time away. But we had him here, you know. We had him here, Jordan Abdul, as a kid. Yeah. He came and spent his first year as a scholarship player with the Rhinos, but I think the travel got a bit too much, and then he eventually settled with Hull FC. But Jordan Abdul has always had that missile for a left peg, and I felt sorry for the back three, and I think probably, as we know, Jonesy, the learning throughout the year is really important. It's not important to win every single week and be 9 or 10 out of 10 every single week. It's to gradually get that little bit better, and what the team's learned is out here on a Saturday afternoon in a really dry track where every pass and every offload sticks. That's different, and needed a different approach for a wet and windy, and Hull KR's windy at the best of times, isn't it? So you torrential rain, windy, and then a dark Friday night, it all lent itself to it being a really difficult night for the Rhinos.
I'd have volleyed some of them back, mate. It's the last job I'd ever want to do. But you mentioned the middle. When the back three don't get it right, or anybody else on the edges, the middle have got to defend it. I think Cam Smith had about 64 tackles, Jared O'Connor 58. Yeah. I know he's the son of a good mate of yours, yeah, Jazz, but he's come a long way in a short space of time, hasn't he?
Absolutely has. And I was trying to explain it to somebody. He's probably only played hooker at top level for about 20 occasions. I think that was his first 80 minutes. It's been important to him that he's been able to get 80 minutes and prove himself to be trustworthy within those 80 minutes as well. With what's happened with Cruz, yeah, he's now the number 9, isn't he, to all intents and purposes. So to prove that the coach doesn't have to accommodate somebody else on the bench was important for him in his progress. So I thought he played well. It's hard on a night like that. If you can catch all the passes that are thrown at you, I think you've done a good job as a middleman, because you and I know you only get in 1 or 2 steps before you're getting whacked and dealt with in the middle. So Jared's doing really well. He's a competitor. I've known him all his life, and I'm really proud of him, and proud of the progress that he's made. From day dot, he was competitive, and from day dot, he was always somebody that had a little bit of something. And I used to say to Tez all the time, I don't know what he's going to do, but whatever he does, he'll be successful at it, because he doesn't take no for an answer, and he doesn't listen to anybody. if anybody doubts and says he can't do something, he takes great pride in proving people wrong. And the best people that we know and that we've been around at this club have that key characteristic. It's a shame he's so short and so small, because I don't know whether you know this, Jonesy, but he's very much smaller than me. He's about 3 inches smaller than me. So.
Well, listen, short and small front rowers, middlemen, size of the fighting the dog, though. It's really interesting. So me and you have a few chats about that temperament. The game's changed. You've got to let go of that fighting spirit, because when you don't get your own way all the time, you can't just knock somebody out or rattle somebody like you used to do on the playing field. But it is rivalry round, and you based a career and identity on being that enforcer in the middle of the field. We've got a tens night tonight with yourself, Jamie Peacock, the Baronet Barrel, Stevie Pitchford and Danny Caprim as well, all played a part in that. But it's gone out of the game, hasn't it? How, you know, looking forward now, how important was it in your day to be the hunter rather than the hunted?
Well, when I first joined, 1990, 91, everybody had somebody in the team who would deal with their opposite number or would be the focal point of that anyway. We all had your opposite's number, but there was always be somebody. And I think Kelvin Skerritt was the one that comes to my mind immediately, who would actively go and find and seek out somebody to deal with. And Kelvin was really good at it. Just going back to people like Jim Mills, who had a little bit of summer, you know, you didn't want to get on the wrong side of them. But when I first got into the game, and the back end of my amateur career, my amateur sort of early formative years, when I'm 15 and 16 years of age, if you got one on the chin, you know, you had to return serve, and that then changed and evolved into I need to be the one that's giving it out. And my first game as a pro, my first home game, I had it in the front of my mind, I'm just going to punch the biggest on the pitch, and we were laughing actually. I don't think you worked on the game, Jones. In 1996 was obviously my second year, and I signed a deal. Dean Bell was the coach, and there's a little section in the contract that said I got fined 500 quid if I got red carded, plus 500 quid for every game that I missed. So 1996, we finished second from bottom. I played nearly every minute of every game, because 95 we were full of mega stars who were 30 plus. They all sort of went away. The Gary Schofields, Gary Mercers of this world, they all sort of went, and I was very quickly one of the most senior players in the squad. But I couldn't get into it with anybody, and we played Saints at Saints, who in 96 actually won it. Big back row called Derek McVeigh sent one through from the second rower. I probably played against him the year before, sent one through. I remember grabbing hold of him saying, no, listen, no, I can't play, leave me alone today. But it was a great part of the game, and a part of the game I loved. And I didn't win them all, Jonesy. I won more than I lost, but I always enjoyed that mano-a-mano aspect of it. And the Bradford games, there were a few that were sort of that way out. Yeah. Brian probably was not that way out, but Brian being Brian, I had a few little exchanges with him, and Brian was always, you know, stood his ground and stuff. But Stuart was probably the one that I had the most fun with, and it's good to look back on it now. But I would say that, wouldn't I enjoyed him. I'm not sure he'd say the same thing if you asked him. Why
Stu Fielding? What was it where did that originate?
I don't know is the answer. I remember playing in a semi-final, and Adrian Morley and myself had put a little ring around his name. Probably because he was the one we hadn't got to at that point. We played Bradford so many times in big games and had so many battles with them. And I just enjoyed it. Yeah.
Because you could.
Yeah.
Because you could.
Yeah.
Think about an arch enemy.
Yeah.
Or a nemesis. And by nemesis, I mean somebody that you always struggle to get it over. I remember Richard Fioso, I think it was, played Cass. He was my nemesis. No matter what happened, I always got defeated.
Yeah.
Or somebody that you revered, somebody that you really respected and looked up to and thought, do you know what, you're a cracking player.
Well, I think the bloke that did it to me was a guy called Quentin Pongia, who died a few years back actually, and Q was I think he was mentally unstable when he was on the field, and occasionally the ball would whiz past mine or his face, and we weren't bothered. We were just looking at one another, and I always knew when I was playing against him that I had to have my wits about me. When I caught the ball, he could come in from anywhere and knock my lights out. And then when he had the ball, I had to make sure I met him. But people like, I'm gonna bring a name up that you might not think, Mark Hilton.
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't do anything with Mark Hilton because he was. There's a very fine line with forwards, Jones. You know that better than anybody, especially them. You know, the ones that run it in when there's 5 defenders in front of them. There's a fine line between stupidity and bravery. And Beast was his nickname. Mark Hilton would just keep coming and coming and coming. And I remember playing against him for Warrington at Wilderspool one time, and there must have been 4 or 5 where, you know, I've run at him, the ball's going up in the air, I'm running at him, he's running at me, and I had to say to him in the end, one of us is going to get really hurt here, run somewhere, because he didn't have a sidestep, he had no footwork, and he weren't veering anybody, he was just, I'm going to run at you and you run at me. But people like Mark Hilton, I struggled with him because I couldn't make any dent in him. He was too daft or too brave to run away. But players like Mick Cassidy had an ability to hit me just below or just above the knee, where I used to have a bit of a bump, didn't I? And I'd go to bump him off and he'd be underneath that bump and I'd be hitting the deck. So I didn't fear anybody. I respected everyone I played against, but I didn't fear anybody. There was nobody that knocked me off my game to the point where I didn't want to go anywhere near them. Sometimes there was a thought process of, I'm not going to win this, so I'm better off just going slightly away from them.
You mentioned Mick Cassidy there. I think he was in the tackaway at Central Park with a young Barrie McDermott who had long black flowing locks, got into Ender Sirenin. I think that might have been one of your first big occasions there. That was against the Australians, Wigan versus Australia. You played in many rivalry games over the years. What was your favourite one when you think about Leeds, Bradford, Yorkshire, Lancashire, Great Britain, Australia? Which do you think is the best rivalry in Rugby League?
Well, I think it's a great shame, Jonesy, and we had a wonderful World Cup, didn't we? I know you worked on it a lot. I think we miss, or I certainly miss, the Great Britain-Australia rivalry. Yeah. I was lucky enough to play in 3 Ashes Test series, made my debut in '94 in one of them, and just seminal moments in my career where I've played against players who I'd watched and idolised all my teenage years and managed to match it with them. But those Aussies seem to get over us each and every time, don't they? So I miss Great Britain. And I think that's a rivalry that you just can't top. I love playing flankshire, and I remember playing flankshire against Yorkshire in 2002, I think it was, where Scully and I clashed heads. Scully went off. He was captain, I was vice captain, so I ended up lifting the trophy by default, and Dougie's dad thought I'd done it on purpose. That's typical of that McDermott. Yeah. So I think that's a rivalry that could be harnessed and cultivated. We'd have to spend some time with it. But club rugby, I loved those Bradford games. I really do, and I think it's a great shame to see where they are now. I remember the '99 Challenge Cup semi-final. Yeah. It's my favourite game of all time, and it was a Sunday afternoon. The celebrations were absolutely epic, Jones. I can't tell you any of it, but needless to say, it was a great night. That because we'd played Bradford 3 times in semi-finals, what seemed to be year after year after year. On the 3rd one, we beat them, and that's probably my favourite game of rugby league. You'd expect it to be a final. You know, you played in a lot of finals. And I think that game was my most enjoyable game because we were against a team that we'd lost quite a few times on the big stage, but we played them at their game. Yestin was out of this world. Moz and Tez Newton and Daz Fleary in the pack. Just a great game where I think Ryan Sheridan proved how good he was on that big stage in that era. So Shez and Yestin and Powley, of course, would have been in the mix, and just a good game, a physical game, but we beat them with physicality and skill as well.
I remember those eras, mate. I was just coming through, a little bit beyond me at the time, I'll be honest with you, but I think my biggest favourite rivalry, Probably Melbourne Storm, we played them a few times.
Yeah.
Managed to get a win against a great side over at Ellen Road. All redefined now, we don't have to worry about those big occasions anymore, Baz. We can just sit back and watch it. I started running, taking up running maybe 18 months ago now, looking forward to Rodborough Leeds Marathon. In a few weeks' time, we've all been preparing for that. But on 18th of June as well, there's the Leeds 10K, Baz. I know you're doing the half marathon, aren't you? For the
I'm going to be part of Rob's day. I can't do the full one. I've done a couple of full marathons. I don't like them. I hate them. Yeah. But my kids, Billy, who was the mascot in '99, and Sophie, who's my second child, wanted to do it. They were desperate to get involved and chose to do the half marathon. So thank the Lord, we're all three of us going to do the same one, and I can, in good conscience, say I'm doing it for the right reasons. But I'm going to be part of the day. I'm going to make sure that I help out wherever and whenever I can. I think probably my half marathon time and Kev's full marathon time and your marathon time, we might be finishing at the same point. But the Leeds 10K on the 18th of June, I'm away, Jonesy, but I've promised that I'll do it over in Spain, so I'll make sure I send a video.
Awesome. 14 for me. Leeds Marathon, Rodborough Marathon and half marathon, can't wait for that. We're all primed and ready to run. 18th of June, the Leeds 10K as well, run with the Rhinos. So lots of money, fundraising opportunities there. This week, Baz rival round for the Leeds Rhinos. It's a double header here at Headingley Stadium. The Leeds Rhinos women's team are back in action against the York Valkyrie, who finished top of the ladder last year. That should be an epic game to kick off what will be a great weekend before we take on the Huddersfield Giants as well. Not a traditional rivalry, but it's one that's developed over years. And Huddersfield beating Salford on the weekend, they're a team to be feared out there when they're playing well.
I've just watched that game this morning on my laptop, Jonesy. Huddersfield are a team that are finding different ways to win. Yeah. As we know, they're very disciplined. Ian Watson knows exactly what he wants from his side. I'll be here because a good mate of ours, who I know you had on your podcast the other week, Willie's going home, so I've got a table, or I'm on a table with the likes of Danny Maggs, Brett Delaney, Chris Smith. So we'll have a couple of shandies, see Willie off, and I'll be able to watch both games. It's a really exciting part of our game, the women's game, isn't it? You know, when you think about all the young girls that are passionate about rugby league, they want an outlet, they want to play, they now can play, they now can see it, so therefore they can be it. I'm looking forward to watching Amy Hardcastle in the blue and amber of Leeds. I've been an admirer of her game for a long time, so I'm looking forward to seeing those two teams who by rights should be the front runners, shouldn't they? Yeah. So York are doing a lot of good things off the field, and when we talk about expansion, we talk about, you know, bringing another team and a team that will add value to the competition, men's and women. I think York are making a lot of good signals and good noises.
You mentioned expansion then, just a really quick one, segue. People keep talking about growing the game. I disagree with it. I think the game is big enough as it is, but we just don't do well enough with what we've already got. We just need to be better with what we're already doing. So imagine a big sunflower, right? And this is the analogy in my mind. I think the sunflower and all the seeds are there, and it looks beautiful, mate. Unfortunately, the stalk that's holding it up is too thin. It needs thickening out all the way. So where there's maybe one person doing something, there might need to be two or three. Just do what we're doing already, but do it better. And you know, you mentioned also there Bradford and people like Amy Hardcastle. She started at Bradford, the women's team, and I've been watching some old games with Danica Prim playing at Bradford as well. And you look at Odsal, what it's been. You've mentioned it a lot of times. If you want to see a gap in the market, it's at Odsal. If you want a new rivalry, get the Leeds and Bradford one back. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, on the change of language there. But is it not right that all the ingredients that we've already got, Baz, asking you to put your pundit head on here, that we just need to be better at what we already do?
Well, I'm a contradiction because I believe in expansion, but I think we've ignored some of our traditional heartlands. I think of Cumbria straight away. Yeah. I go up Cumbria regular to chat to people on different forums, and I get different invites to speak about rugby league, to talk about the game as it is now and it was back in the day. But what we can't do is we can't ignore that fan base. Yeah. It's the closest to a Premiership footballer a rugby league man will ever get when he goes up in Cumbria, because you can't walk down the street without getting recognised. So we need to do better. And here's expansion. Expansion, the definition of expansion is the analogy that you're using. We talk about expansion and we use teams like London, and we use teams like Toulouse, and we use teams like Toronto. That's not expansion, is it? That's throwing something far, far, far down the road with a hope of then it meeting at some point in the middle. So we do need to get our house in order. I'm very interested to see what IMG will bring to the party. I've had a couple of meetings with one of their representatives, and I think they've got a lot to offer us, but I think it's right and proper. They just see what there is, and how many people go into an organisation, just wipe all the notes off the table and go, this is what we're doing, without understanding what's already been done. I'm from Oldham, and in the 50s, Oldham was a real stronghold, and it's still an hotbed. You know, you still look at teams, every team has an Oldhamer in it. You know, to say that they haven't got a recognisable presence in the town. Mike Ford has taken over the Towns team now, and everyone will get behind him and hope that goes well. But you've got to recognise progression. If it's Bradford that needs support and it needs help, I don't believe helping to buy a raft of overseas players or a raft of players from elsewhere to play at Super League is the answer. I believe it's in grassroots, and I believe it's in schools, and I believe it's, you know, you talk about the work that the foundation does for our club here. They're always getting rugby balls in young players' hands. Some of the work that we do with the Ex-Players Association, right at the forefront of my motivation, is getting rugby balls in young kids' hands, making sure that when they see a ball, they don't kick it, they pick it up and they try and run with it or pass it or do whatever that comes naturally to them because of the things that they've learned with those community coaches. If you take a 10-year approach and look at grassroots, supporting amateur clubs and supporting Milford and Stanley and all those great amateur clubs in Leeds, as well as the ones in my locality, and support them with not just funds, with coach education, with, you know, player expectation when they go and join scholarships and stuff like that. We lose so many players, Jonesy, after scholarship that are capable of improving the amateur game, that it's criminal, really. And I've been part of that during my time at Leeds Rhinos. So we've got to do better at keeping players in the game, encouraging players wherever they are, whether they're wheelchair, women or men, and just increasing the bottom of the pyramid, irrelevant of what happens at the top. Increase the bottom of the pyramid so we get more bums on seats and more people watching and supporting the game.
Well, the bottom of the pyramid is the foundation, and I agree. There's a lot of work and a lot of attention. Just lastly there, we're talking about increasing, Huddersfield have increased size of their squad this year. As a Leeds Rhino supporter, player, whatever, what do we have to look out for? Where are Huddersfield going to be dangerous?
They kill you with the consistency, don't they? It's about kicking to corners, it's about putting you under pressure. One of my favourite players to watch at the minute is Luke Yates. I think he's a phenomenal player. He'll rack up 50 odd tackles. He's always there on them difficult carries. He can play with the ball, but I remember and recall a game at Hull KR last year that I worked on. It made a break of 40 metres, so he can run, he's got pace. And I think that mould of player is throughout the team. Owen Trout, who I think started here, didn't he? Yeah. Trout is doing okay. They've got a good balance of side, but the attacking threats, you don't know where they're coming from. Yeah. Good centres, pace at the back, pace on the flanks, power in the middle. So it's a little bit of everything. We're going to have to play well this week. We're going to have to make sure that we have more of a Catalan type of performance than anything else. And if it's dry, if the passes stick, if the trick plays that the players and the team enjoy using, if they come off, then it's going to be a good. I'm looking forward to a bright day, a couple of pints with some old mates, and hopefully a win.
There it is, you ready for Barrie McDermott? Get yourself down here. It's going to be a fantastic Easter weekend. The Leeds Rhinos women kicking off against the York Valkyrie, followed by the Leeds Rhinos against the Huddersfield Giants. Loads going on around the ground. We're going to be back in the long bar as well afterwards. We're going to go catch up with JP, the big barrel, Stevie Pitchford and Danica Prim. I'm going to ask them who some of their biggest rivals and tormentors were during the course of their career. But in the meantime, thanks very much, Baz, for joining us in Box 2, and I shall see you next week.
Fate Entertainment.
You know, we change lives through sport at Headingley, and the only way we can do that is by coming together and talking about what's gone on, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. Now, I wanted to start off with a big bang, and we've got a Tens night, and tonight the theme is going to be all about rivalries.
To be honest, you know, when we played Leeds and Baz was the only prop we were talking about was Jamie Matthew, really, Baz. that.
Entertainment.
The referee jumped in between us. I saw what he did, Steve. Leave it with me. Penalty. I went, and I shook his hand and said, thanks very much.
I did it really to wear the badge on my shirt, you know, and there's no greater honour than wearing the Leeds Rhinos badge and retiring with that on my shirt.
I love that. I love that. That's brilliant.
I play up to that pantomime villain, and I play to the stereotype of the thug and the dirty. I couldn't care less.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Oh yeah.